So for this first beat, we're going to work at 84 beats per minute. We're going to be using Analog Lab pretty much as always for all of the melodic sounds. This is my go-to preset. This is my default preset. Electric piano, Rhodes sounds, those are going to be the perfect foundation for any G-Funk beat. Now with this instrument, the harder you hit the notes, the sort of more distorted it sounds. So you want to be quite soft when you're playing it. And the key with this is going to be 7th chords, 9th chords. So let's just draw in this chord progression. And the progression that I'm going to base it on is the 1-6-5-4 progression, which is really smooth, quite gentle, definitely laid back. So let's just start off by drawing in the bass notes. And we just need 4 chords for this. So we're going to do 1 and then the 6. Good thing in Ableton, obviously highlighting the notes you need. And we'll go down to the 5 and then down to the 4. What I like to do when doing these 7th and 9th chords is we'll let the bass note be the root notes and we can let the other notes above it do more interesting things. So that's the chord I'm trying to get to basically. Let's just lower these velocities. Like I said, they need to be quite soft. There we go. So we've got a nice smooth chord there, but we want to invert some of the notes. So let's just work it out in a cool way. Let's just move this up an octave. That's the perfect first chord. You can instantly feel it. A lot of the time with G-Funk, it's just more about the feeling. I think certain chords just instantly tell you this is G-Funk. So now we just want to do something similar for the rest of the chords, but we don't want to have too much movement within these notes in terms of the inversions, and that's what's going to make it even smoother. So you can see having 3 of the notes of that chord just literally being copied over and then 1 note have a change just keeps it really smooth and sultry. And now again we can do something similar, so we'll just copy this over. So we can see we've got this 1 note here that has now moved out of the scale, but I think it fits. And now for the last chord, it feels obvious what it needs to sound like. Like if you're listening to the progression, it just seems like it writes itself. Yeah, and now we can see the velocities are all the same, so we can just randomize that a little bit, but we don't want to go, you know, that much. Just make it a little bit more sort of natural. And now this is what we've got. I think that's like the best chord progression I've ever done, especially by drawing in the notes. By the way, if you find it long to like make chord progressions and figure them out, I've got some really good pre-made chord progressions in MIDI that you can just drag and drop. I'll put the link down in the description and the pinned comment where you can check it out. If you need help with chord progressions and like ideas for starting beats, I've got a lot of cool stuff for that. So now that we've got that saved with the nice Rhodes, we can easily just duplicate that layer and just do the standard thing, which is to layer it with something a bit different, just texturally, something that complements that sound. So something like this could work if it was a bit softer maybe. So I like that being there, just really subtly, just adding a bit more sort of sparkle and magic to the overall sound. Okay, next up, what do we need for this melody? Well, we need a main melody to go over the chord progression. And the good thing with a smooth chord progression like that is I think it's really easy to naturally come up with something just by singing, humming, noodling around on an instrument. So we've got this Analog Lab sound now, and let's try to translate what's in the brain to the actual keys, which can always be a bit difficult if you're not a good piano player. Sometimes it is literally that easy. You just strike gold out of nowhere when you've been struggling to make like anything that sounds good for like weeks on end. Now next up, I'm hearing an electric guitar. You're gonna always get these in the G-Funk beats because they would sample these sort of soul tracks that had lots of electric guitar, a lot of funky guitars in there. So little things like that, little noodles, always gonna sound nice. If you're interested in learning how to play guitar, I am planning a guitar video soon, a basic like how to play guitar for producers. So you know the basics of being able to play melodies like I just did. A few simple tips and tricks that can hopefully help you, especially if you haven't got time to like fully jump into learning guitar. So if you're interested in that, make sure you subscribe and you'll see that video soon. Now just to finish off the melody, I'm throwing in this little string stem. Just literally holding that one note, but you can see it's in the C minor scale. And I've got that from the Loaded Samples Loaded G-Funk Volume 1 kit. It's my favorite kit to use at the moment. It's got really good sounds, drum loops, one-shots specifically for G-Funk. So check that out. It's somewhere online and I think I paid like $30 for it. And now that we've got our melody finished, we just need to process the group a little bit. And you know what I'm going to say? RC20, all we need. Vinyl 3 is my go-to patch. I like to turn down the noise to be like 4%. You can hear that crackle. And now it sounds like it's actually been sampled and lifted straight off a record. Okay, now we're going to move on to the most important part of this beat, I think, and that's going to be the bass. We need the perfect, funky, like melodic bass guitar that's going to really just make you sort of groove and lay back to this beat. Now I like to use a bass guitar for this. You can use a Moog, you can use like a lot of different things, but a bass guitar is always going to be nice, especially for the important part, which I'll mention in a minute. Now the key here is that we want to follow the chord progression, of course, but we want to make it funky. So we want to have like some interesting walking notes, some just like cool things happening. So doing octaves is a really easy way just to sound funky. So we're going to just start again on the C, following the chords. So I mentioned doing the octave, let's jump it up. So we need it shorter than that. A lot of trial and error is needed for this, so I'll warn you in advance. Ooh. G sharp. Let's hold that note. I think this whole thing needs to go down an octave. Dum, 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 dum. What's that supposed to be? Dum, dum. Oh God. Do do dum, do do dum, do do dum. Yeah. Simple AF. Now I mentioned why it's important to do a bass guitar for this, and that's because of the key element of this bass line, and that's a slap bass. When I tell you that this changed my beats forever when I figured this little trick out, you can obviously sort of draw it in, but it's not going to sound the same. But basically we want a slap bass sample that can come in the right moments. So in this G-Funk pack, you've got these slap guitars and you can see the notes it goes from and to, which is really, really helpful. Now, when you hear it all together, tell me that that is not a game changer. What can I say? If you don't think that is dope, then there's no hope for you. And look, we're basically done now. We just got to do the drums. And honestly, the drums are so easy to do for G-Funk. It's just simplicity all the way. You could use a break. And like I said, this kit has some really good drum loops in there. But what we want to do is get natural sounding drums and play it in. So what I've got here in the sampler is a break that I use quite often because I really like the crispiness of the drum sounds. And you can see I've just sliced it, transients, turned it down. So I've got the individual hits basically. Those are the 3 notes, that's all you need. And now you throw in a few like perk sounds on top of that and you are good to go. I think that might be one of the best beats I've ever made. It's so simple, but so effective. So now let's move on to the next type of G-Funk beat. Alright, so for beat 2, we're keeping that G-Funk foundation, but this time I want it to bounce a little bit more. So I'm thinking something like Gin and Juice, still West Coast, but a bit more dancier, more movement. Now the cool thing with G-Funk is that we're going to use the same system, the same process. It still works the same way, but we're just going to change a few minor things. So this time we're working at 95 beats per minute, and we're going to start off with this sample chord. So again, an electric piano, always the perfect foundation for any G-Funk beat. And the instant idea that I have is just to loop this. And that one chord, let's just move it up 1 semitone. We'll just fix a little fade on there. And now we can just loop that. And that's going to be running the whole way through. Let's put a bit of chorus on there just to make it sound a bit more full. Not too much. Now, same as before, we just need to find an interesting sound that can layer with the initial chords. And that's the foundation, really simple, less of a chord progression, but just keeping it centered on that E minor means we can do a lot of work with the groove and the bounce. Let's layer this guitar strum with it. Now let's do another electric piano, and this time we can do something more like a stab. So we're having like just the same chord be played in different ways and different instruments, and that just gives us some nice little variation. Now I just want to put in this quick sample from a stem that I've got, which it just fits with the overall vibe, but this is it by itself. And then all together. Now for the melody, let's just leave it there and move on to the bass. Again, I'm using the same bass guitar sound, and we want to follow the same sort of principles of having like interesting things happening while following the chords. So as simple as that, we've got a relatively funky bass line, and I like it because it has that octave jump with that note in between on the B. But then that's the important note right there, that B flat. It just adds a certain quality to it, and because it's like out of the scale of E minor, it just works for some reason, adding that little like weird sound. Yeah, I think we've got a good little bounce going on. We just need to do the drums and finish it off. For this, I'm just going to use a break from the loaded samples kit. So these drum bounces are really good, just drag and drop. I do always think it's good to layer your own sounds with it and, you know, spice it up a bit, chop it, whatever. That's the one for sure. I think that is perfect. But like I said, just to jazz it up, you can layer in some extra sounds. So we can just throw in a little hat. As simple as that. And again, you do some of like the group processing. So we just chuck on the RC20. You just mess around with, you know, a bit of noise, a bit of distortion. We make the drums hit a little bit harder, OTT again, and then you get something like this. Okay, if you stuck around this far, then I really appreciate it. For this beat, we're going to quickly go over sampling. So obviously a lot of those classic G-Funk records are sampling a lot of like 60s and 70s, funky, soulful, jazz type of music. And honestly, a lot of the beats just sample them, loop them, don't even add anything, maybe layer the drums, layer in a bass. So for this example, I've just got this sample. What you can do with these sort of samples is just loop it like that, speed it up,
pitch it around a bit,
make sure it's at the sort of G-Funk tempo, you know, anything between 82 up to even 95 maybe. So for this one, all I've done is dragged it into a simpler. You can see I've sliced it by transient, turned down the sensitivity. Now, best thing to do is just to bounce this down to audio. So we'll just arm the track below it, and you can see we've got the input set to the channel above, and let's just record it in. Now we can like pitch it and really adjust it in any way we want because it is audio. So I'm just going to literally pitch it down a couple of semitones. Now with the bass line for something like this, it's a little bit more like you want to follow the melody. This one I think is pretty simple. This time, let's just build in the drums from scratch. And it is pretty simple. You're just following that sort of boom bap style of pattern. So if we go to the loaded samples kit, we've got some one shots. And we can also just throw in an open hat. An open hat is always good when you're doing like live sounding drums. It just always breaks up the pace a bit. Then we can put in a clap. And now we can layer something with the clap. I like to do either a snare or a tambourine, depending on the type of beat. Let's do a snare for this one. Next, we can try a shaker. Now, if you want another kit as an alternative to that loaded samples kit that's good for these sort of beats, I found that the G'd Up kit by J Cactus is really good. It's got a lot of good West Coast sounds, early 2000s, but it works for the sort of 90s G-Funk era as well, I find. So let's just throw in a shaker and maybe also even a perk loop just to spice things up a little bit. So now all we have to do is the kick, and this is pretty easy in these beats. You know, you don't want to do anything too crazy, you just stick to the grid essentially. But we'll do it in MIDI so we can change the kick sound if we need to. Yep, that's it. That's all we need. And now we're left with a fully functioning drum pattern. Now you don't really need to add any more melodic layers to it. You could just let it loop like that, like a lot of those old school beats do. But if you want to add something, you can just add a few little touches and accents. So in this case, I've got a clavinet. And all I'm going to really do is just layer that like guitar riff. And as simple as that, you can make a sick G-Funk beat just by finding a really good sample, looping it, making sure the drums are on point, and you're good to go.
Love the way you activate your hips and push your ass out. Got a brother wanting it so bad I'm about to pass out. Wanna dig you, and I can't even lie about it, baby. Just alleviate your clothes, I'm the fly about it. Catch you at the club, your hips have got me feeling. Body talking quick to me, but I can't comprehend the meaning. Now if you wanna roll with me, then here's your chance. Doing 80 on the freeway. Catch me if you can, forgive me, I'm a rider. Still I'm just a simple man. All I want is money plus the fame. I'm a simple man, Mr. International, player with a passport, just like a Latin switch.
If you want to see another classic West Coast tutorial, check out this video here where I made something inspired by Reincarnated by Kendrick Lamar. Otherwise, have a good one. Peace out.
What my foes need, make some emojis for you don't need. Approaching women with a passion, been a long day, but I've been driven by attraction in a strong way. Your body is banging, baby, I love the way you're flowing. Time to give it to Daddy Sugar, now tell me